He spent 40 years doing exactly what he was told. He rose early, reported on time, followed instructions, and waited patiently for the reward promised at the end. And when the end finally arrived, something terrible happened. The reward did not feel like freedom, it felt like removal. I sat across from this man as he spoke quietly, almost embarrassed by his own confusion. He said, "I thought I was working toward something, but now that it's here, I don't know who I am without the work. No bitterness, no anger, just emptiness where purpose once lived. That is the moment no one prepares you for. Not the last day of work, but the first day after. When the structure is gone, the schedule is gone, the sense of usefulness is gone. And suddenly the question appears, uninvited and relentless. Was this all I was trained for? Most men are never told the truth. They are taught to trade their strongest years for security later. They are taught patience, obedience, and endurance, but never independence. And by the time they realize the bargain was flawed, their best energy has already been spent. Ask yourself something honestly. Were you ever trained to become free, or only trained to become efficient? Were you taught how to think independently, or how to fit into a system? Were you prepared for life, or only for employment? The retirement promise sounds generous on the surface. Work hard now, sacrifice now, live later. But life does not work on deferred payment. Purpose does not wait politely until you are tired. And freedom does not arrive automatically just because the calendar advances. I have watched men reach the so-called finish line only to discover it was not a finish line at all. It was an exit ramp, an exit from relevance, an exit from challenge, an exit from growth. And without growth, the spirit begins to shrink. The cruelest part of the lie is this: no one forces you into it. You accept it slowly, 1 year at a time, one promotion, one raise, one promise that says, just hold on a little longer. And each year, the habit deepens. Most men never question the arrangement because questioning it feels dangerous. It threatens stability. It invites uncertainty. But what is more dangerous? Uncertainty now, or regret later when change becomes impossible. Here is what is rarely said aloud. A system that requires you to become less useful with age is not designed for your freedom. It is designed for your compliance. It extracts your strength early and offers you rest when strength is gone. Rest is not freedom, comfort is not purpose, and survival is not success. Notice how often the word retirement is spoken with relief, not excitement, as if life has been something to endure rather than something to direct, as if the highest aspiration is to finally stop contributing. The truth is harsher and more hopeful. Man was not built to stop. He was built to grow, to create, to direct, to decide. Remove purpose, and the body follows it into decline. Remove challenge, and the mind begins to dull. The tragedy is not working too long. The tragedy is working without a plan for independence, without ownership of time, without control over thought, income, and direction. That is the real prison, and it is entered voluntarily. You were not born to count down the years. You were born to command them. And the moment you accept that truth, the entire structure you have been living under begins to crack. Breaking free does not begin with rebellion. It begins with understanding, with seeing the pattern clearly, with realizing that freedom is not an event at 65. It is a habit built daily, long before. There is a way out, but it is not offered openly. It does not come with applause. It requires that you stop waiting for permission and start preparing yourself to think, decide, and act as an independent man. Most will not do this. They will stay comfortable. They will stay busy. They will stay distracted. And one day they will wonder why time feels heavier instead of lighter. But a few will listen differently. They will hear this not as criticism, but as a warning delivered in time. They will recognize that the greatest risk is not failure. It is spending a lifetime preparing for a freedom that never arrives. If this unsettles you, it should. That unease is not fear. It is awareness waking up, and awareness is always the first step toward escape. In this speech, I will show you the lie as it is, not as it is advertised. And more importantly, I will show you how men break free from it, not at the end of life, but while life is still full of strength, vision, and possibility. Listen carefully, because once you see this clearly, you cannot unsee it. And once you understand it, you will never again be satisfied with a future that asks you to grow smaller instead of greater. Most men are not broken by work. They are tamed by it. The tragedy is not labor itself, but what it does to the spirit when performed without understanding. A man enters the world eager to build, to prove, to rise. Yet somewhere between ambition and habit, he is taught to obey more than he is taught to think. He becomes efficient, but not independent, obedient, but not original, useful to others, yet unused by his own purpose. The system that trains men for obedience begins long before they wear a uniform or punch a clock. It begins when they are told what to memorize, not how to reason. When they are rewarded for silence, not curiosity. When they learn that correctness is safer than conviction. Each grade, each job, each promise of stability tightens the invisible chain until compliance feels like virtue. Work itself is noble. Every man should serve, build, and produce. But servitude to unexamined work is not noble. It is waste. Labor without thought drains life faster than idleness because it wears the body while starving the soul. The world has never suffered from too much work. It has suffered from too little purpose within work. I have seen how society praises the safe man, the man who never questions, never risks, never grows beyond the system that feeds him. He becomes a perfect cog, smooth and reliable, until the day the machine no longer needs him. Then he is replaced, thanked politely, and forgotten. Safety, in such a world, is only a slower kind of death. There is a law I have named the law of constructive disobedience. It is the discipline of questioning any rule, tradition, or instruction that limits growth or contradicts conscience. Disobedience without direction is chaos, but intelligent disobedience is progress. Every invention, every reform, every leap of civilization began with one man who refused to obey the limits of another man's imagination. Consider Henry Ford. He was a mechanic like thousands of others, yet he refused to be confined by his employer's understanding of what an engine could be. While others were content to repair, he created. He built his own machine, then his own system, and finally an empire that changed how the world moves. His disobedience was not rebellion, it was revelation. Andrew Carnegie began as a telegraph operator. He could have remained one for life, grateful for steady pay. Instead, he studied every principle of industry he could find. He learned what others ignored. He watched how men led and how they failed. By the time opportunity appeared, he was already its master. He broke no law but one, the unspoken rule that men should stay where they are placed. The employee mindset, as I have often observed, is psychological before it is financial. It is not poverty of income, but poverty of initiative. Dependence grows invisible roots. A steady paycheck numbs imagination. The man who fears losing security has already lost freedom. He trades adventure for predictability, and then wonders why life feels narrow. The same energy used to obey can be redirected to create. Every hour spent fulfilling another's plan could be spent advancing your own. The difference lies not in ability, but in courage. The courage to trust your own judgment as much as you trust the orders of others. Most men are paid, not in wealth, but in certainty. They receive a mental payroll, comfort, routine, predictability. These are the coins of mediocrity. The world gives them gladly to any man who stops asking dangerous questions. Yet the price is staggering. His imagination, his autonomy, his chance to live by choice rather than necessity. Routine is the quiet killer of destiny. It feels harmless, even noble at first. But repetition without growth turns a man into a shadow of himself. He becomes efficient at staying the same. And when change finally comes, he discovers that safety was the most expensive illusion of all. The retirement promise is the final bait. It says, "Give your best years now, and one day you will rest." But rest is not reward, it is removal. A man exchanges his energy for comfort, then discovers he has lost the identity that created it. He becomes a guest in his own life, sitting at the banquet of past effort with no appetite left for creation. The spiritual law of usefulness cannot be violated without consequence. Purpose sustains vitality. The moment usefulness ends, decay begins, not always in the body, but first in the mind. When a man stops contributing, he stops commanding himself. He grows uncertain, restless, and old long before his time. Thomas Edison worked into his 80s. When asked why he never retired, he replied that he had no need to. His work was not labor, it was life. Creation fed him more than comfort ever could. That is why his spirit outlasted his years. He remained useful and therefore remained alive. The mind trained for retirement cannot handle freedom, because freedom without direction feels like chaos. It needs command. It needs purpose. Without it, it drifts into idleness, and idleness quickly becomes despair. That is the real tragedy of retirement. Not rest, but loss of identity. Freedom, therefore, must be practiced daily. or it disappears when finally granted. You cannot wait 40 years to learn liberty. You must begin now by reclaiming the right to direct your thought, your labor, and your destiny. Independence is not an age, it is a habit. This brings me to another principle I call the law of substitution. Nature abhors a vacuum. You cannot remove obedience without replacing it with discipline. You cannot remove fear without filling its place with faith. You cannot escape dependence without building initiative. Every habit must be substituted, not merely resisted. Begin the untraining of the mind through small acts of defiance against limitation. Question 1, belief daily that confines your imagination. Ask why you do what you do and whether it serves your highest purpose. This quiet rebellion, practiced consistently, breaks the oldest chain, the habit of unthinking compliance. Each time you challenge the unnecessary, you awaken the creative faculty. You begin to see possibilities where others see walls. You begin to act not as a servant of the system, but as an architect of your own. That shift, once made, changes the entire course of life. Affirm this daily until it becomes part of your nature. I am not trained to obey, I am trained to think. I do not wait for direction, I give it. I serve purpose, not habit. My work builds me, not breaks me. These are not words of rebellion. They are words of reclamation. They declare allegiance to the higher law of growth. Every day spent reacting to orders is a day stolen from your own direction. Each unexamined routine is a silent theft of years. Men wonder why time accelerates as they grow older. It is because repetition dulls awareness. When every day looks the same, life disappears between them. The man who lives deliberately slows time itself. His days are not repetitions, they are creations. Each one has intention. Each one compounds into mastery. That is how life lengthens, not in years, but in meaning. Understanding this law does more than expose a system. It redeems time. It can save not just years of labor, but decades of drift. It restores to you the greatest privilege a man can have, to work because he chooses to serve because he wills to, and to rest only when creation is complete. The system that trains men for obedience cannot enslave the man who trains himself for purpose. The difference lies not in opportunity, but in awareness. Once you see how the pattern works, you cannot unsee it. Once you understand it, you will never again settle for a life that asks you to grow smaller instead of greater. This is the first act of freedom, to recognize the invisible chain and choose to break it, not by rage, but by reason. The rest of this journey will show you how to build what obedience once denied you. Ownership of thought, mastery of time, and a life that no system can retire. You cannot be free until you own yourself. The man who does not command his own hours, his own thoughts, and his own decisions is a tenant in his own life. Ownership is not a deed you file in an office. It is a dominion you establish in the mind. The first estate a man must govern is himself. Most men mistake possession for ownership. They possess houses, tools, wages, and habits, yet they direct none of them. Their time is rented, their attention borrowed, their opinions issued by others. True wealth begins where dependence ends, and dependence is not broken by revolt, but by responsibility. To own a thing, you must be able to direct it. To direct it, you must not fear losing it. That is why so few men ever become masters of themselves. They fear the loss of comfort more than the loss of purpose. They cling to safety until safety itself becomes the prison. Men trained to fear risk are already owned by caution. Their courage is leased to circumstance. They wait for signs, permissions, guarantees, but life pays its highest wages to those who act in advance of proof. Security purchased with submission is the costliest contract ever signed. There are two roads, the road of security first and the road of mastery first. The man who seeks security first will spend his life guarding it. The man who seeks mastery first creates security as a byproduct. One begins with fear, the other begins with faith. Andrew Carnegie understood this law. He said, "Make men partners, not servants." Ownership multiplies effort because it multiplies responsibility. Every man who felt part of his vision worked as though the empire were his own. Carnegie enriched men by giving them a stake in their usefulness, and that same law applies within the soul. Make your faculties partners, not servants. True wealth is born in mental independence long before financial abundance. A man who owns his thought already controls the seed of every fortune. He cannot be impoverished, for he holds the source from which wealth flows. The greatest asset is not capital, but controlled attention, the power to fix the mind upon one aim until reality conforms. I call this the law of controlled attention. Whatever the mind consistently holds, it attracts, organizes, and becomes. Thought scattered is power diffused. Thought concentrated is power condensed. Edison proved this law. His laboratory was a temple of focus. He could think of nothing else but the problem before him, and so nature yielded its secrets to his persistence. Lincoln mastered storms that would have drowned other men. When anger rose, he wrote letters he never sent. When despair visited, he answered it with renewed purpose. Calm was not his temperament, it was his strategy. He ruled himself until his restraint ruled a nation. There are 4 estates every man must reclaim to break the cycle of dependence. First is the ownership of time. He must stop renting his hours to those who dictate their use. He must learn to direct a portion of each day to the building of his own vision, even while serving another's temporarily. Time misused is life misplaced. Second is ownership of thought. He must cease giving attention to gossip, distraction, and fear that yield no return. Every thought that does not build weakens. Every hour given to noise robs the treasury of purpose. Guard thought as you would guard gold. Third is ownership of skill. Build value that travels with you, not the title that keeps you. A skill directed by imagination cannot be confiscated. Men lose positions daily, but no one can discharge the man who has trained himself to produce value independently. Fourth is ownership of faith, the belief that you can govern destiny through definite purpose. Faith is not waiting for miracles. It is working as though miracles are already in motion. The man of faith behaves as master even when he serves, and that behavior soon becomes truth. Life pays the man who pays himself in growth. I call this the mental wage. Every day you add to your competence, confidence, or character, you draw interest from eternity. The man who stops growing stops earning, no matter how much money he collects. Dependence is the cleverest disguise of captivity because it masquerades as stability. The man who fears losing his position is already unemployed in spirit. His worth exists only on paper. But the man who carries his value within can cross any border, enter any field, and begin again without loss. Freedom demands responsibility. The lazy man desires liberty without burden. He wants harvest without cultivation. But law will not be mocked. It delivers results only to the disciplined. Responsibility is the price of ownership. Evasion is the cost of slavery. Retirement becomes tragedy when treated as escape instead of evolution. The man who builds nothing beyond his occupation has nowhere to go when the occupation ends. He retires not from work, but from purpose. The body survives. The will expires. Faith is enterprise. Each day you act from belief that you are the cause, not the effect. You cease to plead with circumstance and begin to instruct it. You move from reaction to creation. That is the posture of ownership. Ideas are the true currency of wealth. Initiative is their multiplier. I name this the law of inner capital. Every idea acted upon increases the balance of confidence. Every hesitation spends it. The richest man is he whose imagination is most disciplined and most employed. When a man reclaims self-ownership, others perceive it before he speaks. They see independence in his bearing, clarity in his decision, calm in his tone. He no longer seeks approval, he radiates direction. Even those still enslaved by opinion respect the man who has outgrown it. Self-discipline is the seed of self-ownership. The man who commands himself cannot be commanded by the world. The greatest freedom is not to do what you please, but to do what you must, without needing permission. Discipline is liberty organized. Henry Ford refused to outsource thinking. When his engineers told him a design was impossible, he said, "Build it anyway." Months later, they brought him the working engine. He understood that to delegate thinking is to delegate power. He forced his men to discover their own minds, and in doing so, multiplied his own. Each morning, issue a definite command to your mind. What shall be achieved, learned, or created today? The subconscious awaits instruction like a faithful worker. If you do not give it orders, the world will, and the world pays poorly. Repeat this until it becomes reflex. I own my thought. I direct my time. I multiply my worth through daily discipline. I am not employed by fear. I am employed by purpose. These are not affirmations. They are deeds performed in words. Dependence wastes decades through delay. Every hour spent asking permission is an hour lost from construction. Self-ownership compresses results because it eliminates hesitation. Decision replaces doubt. Action replaces explanation. To reclaim ownership is to shorten the road to fulfillment. It is to condense years of wandering into months of direction. The man who acts as cause instead of effect lives 10 lives in the span of one. He becomes the architect where others remain the brick. When a man owns himself, the world reorganizes around him. Circumstance begins to follow instead of lead. Opportunity knocks because it senses command. The same world that once confined him now serves him, because law always serves the man who obeys it intelligently. The cycle of dependence breaks not by rebellion, but by responsibility accepted. Freedom is not granted, it is earned daily through disciplined thought. The man who understands this never again waits for permission to live. He has already signed his own emancipation. Man was not created to retire from usefulness. He was created to expand, to create, to lead, and to serve. The body grows old only when the mind ceases to create. When imagination is no longer used, vitality retreats. Work is not the enemy of life. It is the means by which life renews itself daily. Retirement is not a law of nature. It is an invention of systems that no longer need you. Nature never retires. It renews. The river does not stop flowing once it reaches the sea. It rises again as vapor to begin anew. So too must man renew his own usefulness if he wishes to remain alive in spirit. I call this principle the law of continuous creation. Growth sustains energy. The man who continues to produce, to think, and to give remains young in soul, even when his hair turns white. The one who stops becomes old long before his years demand it. Stagnation is decay, disguised as comfort. Thomas Edison's later inventions are proof that creation extends vitality. When others his age withdrew from work, he still rose each morning to direct experiments. His joy was not in completion, but in motion. The current of creation kept his spirit burning. He died in usefulness, not in rest. Andrew Carnegie, after building an empire, devoted his later years to giving it away with intelligence. His philanthropy was not penance, it was purpose redirected. He continued to build, only this time his material was men and knowledge. By serving after success, he secured immortality through influence. Men decline after retirement because they confuse rest with recovery and recovery with reason to stop. Rest should serve creation, not replace it. A mind that is not engaged in direction soon turns against itself. Purpose, not leisure, is the medicine for exhaustion. There is a biological truth that confirms what faith has always known. Thought in motion keeps the spirit alive. Every idea acted upon recharges the nervous system with vitality. Every day of stagnation weakens it. Activity of purpose is more rejuvenating than idleness of comfort. Wealth, when measured correctly, is not accumulation, but usefulness. A man's final account is not the balance of his bank, but the balance of his contribution. What did he build? What did he strengthen? What continues because he lived? That is the true dividend of success. The man who stops contributing stops commanding his mind. The faculties designed for creation begin to corrode through neglect. Nature withdraws strength from what it cannot use. The body follows the spirit. The mind that governs creation governs health itself. The habit of production is the truest form of preservation. It keeps the mind sharp, the will active, and the emotions balanced. A man engaged in creation rarely feels tired. His energy is multiplied by meaning. Idleness, not work, drains vitality, for it leaves the imagination unemployed. I name another principle, the law of eternal service. True service transcends wage, title, and position. It continues through principle. The man who serves ideas, truth, and improvement never runs out of work, for those causes never finish their course. Such service makes a life indestructible in influence. Abraham Lincoln's moral legacy did not end at his death. His work outlived him because it was tied to a cause larger than self. He served truth, not merely victory. Men who serve the eternal cannot be erased by time. They become part of the law they obeyed. Energy responds to direction. Purpose channels it as a river channels water. When the current of will loses direction, energy spreads thin and disappears. To feel alive, one must feel aimed. The mind, like the heart, beats strongest when it moves toward something definite. Purpose replenishes vitality. The man who has a reason to rise never grows old in spirit. You can measure a man's youth not by the lines on his face, but by the plans in his mind. The moment he stops planning, the grave begins to form, even if he still walks. Rest should serve renewal, not retreat. Reflection is fuel when used to refine future action. But reflection without intention becomes nostalgia, the most dangerous form of rest, for it chains the mind to what is gone and blinds it to what could still be built. Beware the false promise that says, "One day I will finally rest." Rest does not create joy. Creation does. The mind designed for growth cannot be satisfied by stillness. You cannot retire from your nature without punishment. Rest may soothe the body, but it starves the soul. Turn experience into renewal. The man who has lived long has collected vast material for teaching, building, guiding. When he shares it, he doubles it. A craftsman who teaches his skill multiplies his legacy. The knowledge he gives continues working long after his tools are still. Legacy is not measured in monuments or wealth, but in principles multiplied through men. The greatest teachers did not leave buildings, they left understanding. The richest men left systems of service. The strongest leaders left examples of courage. Principles once embodied outlived the bodies that carried them. Creation is faith in motion. Every time you produce something new, you proclaim, "I still believe in tomorrow." That belief keeps the spirit from withering. Faith inactive becomes superstition. Faith expressed through creation becomes power. The continuously creative man is timeless. He becomes ageless because purpose renews him faster than years can wear him down. His presence stirs ambition in younger men, for they sense in him the vitality of one who has never stopped growing. He becomes both mirror and model to those still learning direction. Faith, imagination, and service form his fountain of youth. Together they keep the river of life flowing through him. He needs no miracle to extend his days. His days extend themselves through usefulness. Every idea he births keeps part of him alive forever. Say this daily as you act upon it: I never retire from growth. My mind remains fertile, my purpose active, my service alive. Each day I create, I renew my strength. Let these words be lived more than spoken, for they contain the power to delay decay indefinitely. 1 year of deliberate creation after 40 equals 10 of passive waiting. Each day of direction multiplies the energy of youth. Time rewards those who use it as raw material, not as an excuse for decline. The man who continues to create never fears the calendar. He does not count his years, he weighs them. Each one has weight because each one produced something that endures. The years of creation are heavy with meaning, the years of idleness are light as dust. A man who lives by this law dies finished, not faded, complete, not consumed. Death cannot rob a life that has fulfilled its work. The end becomes a seal, not a loss. He leaves behind not residue, but radiation, the silent power of an existence that expressed its full purpose. From obedient worker to self-owned man to timeless creator, that is the natural evolution of a human soul. Those who stop midway never know peace, for they confuse survival with success. Those who reach the final stage live in quiet triumph. They have broken every chain by outgrowing it. Freedom is not a destination. It is a daily act of creation. Each thought directed, each idea acted upon, each day used deliberately builds another layer of immortality. The man who learns this truth saves not only years of his life, but the spirit of it. He never outlives his usefulness because usefulness has become his life itself.